huge changes in the policy direction of China from the 1980s, when the focus was on industrial development, very much economic growth at the forefront, and boosting exports, industrialization. But I think in the last 10 or 15 years, we've seen quite a shift in policy towards a more balanced economic development model, with much greater emphasis on sort of green development, sustainable development. And that's very much evident in areas such as agriculture, also energy policy. I think that's fundamental, given global efforts to try to get to net zero emissions. So I do think that we have seen already quite a shift in policy in the direction of more sustainable development in China. And I think that's an important model for other developing countries who have not yet reached that situation. I think many countries that are, say, low-income countries or even middle-income developing countries have not yet reached that point where they can put the same sort of efforts in policy development. We do see changes in policy, particularly in the area of climate change, that have happened in the relatively recent past. So that's very encouraging. But I think what China is doing does create an important role model, I think, for many other developing countries. And I think in the area of sustainable development, for example, India hasn't come as far as China yet. So I think that example of how China has changed its policy in terms of sustainable development, energy policy, shifting towards renewable energy, all of those things, I think, are useful for other countries like India. Indonesia is another very populous country where I think there's many lessons to be learned from China's more advanced, I would say, more advanced policies in sustainable development. And I think financing comes into that as well. When we look at green bonds financing amongst developing countries, China is a leader, and it's been by far the biggest issuer of green bonds. And so I think, again, in the area of financing sustainable development, China is also a leader. And I think that model of financing development, sustainable development pathways, China also has a lot of examples that it can give to other developing countries around the world.